The Silk Road, A Journey Through Time Part 6, Art, Culture, and the Weaving of Worlds. The artistic traditions that flourished along the Silk Road created styles that defied simple geographic categorization. In the caves of Bamiyan, Afghanistan, colossal Buddha statues were carved into cliff faces between the 3rd and 5th century CE, the tallest standing 180 feet high. These magnificent sculptures blended Greek artistic influence from Alexander's conquest with Indian Buddhist iconography and Central Asian aesthetic sensibilities. The Buddha's robes flowed in Greco-Roman style drapery, while their faces bore the serene expressions of Indian Buddhist art. Pilgrims traveling the Silk Road would stop at Bamiyan, and the site became a crossroads where artists from different traditions studied and learned from one another. Tragically, these statues were destroyed by the Taliban in 2001, but their existence for over 15 centuries testified to the creative fusion the Silk Road enabled. Metalworking techniques traveled these routes with remarkable sophistication. Damascus steel, produced in Syria and renowned throughout medieval Europe for its strength and distinctive wavy patterns, was actually made from wood steel imported from India and Sri Lanka. The raw steel ingots traveled thousands of miles to Damascus, where master smiths forged them into legendary swords, blades both flexible and incredibly hard, capable of cutting through lesser swords or even a falling silk scarf. The exact process was lost around 1750 CE, and modern metallurgists have spent decades trying to reverse engineer the technique. Meanwhile, Chinese steel production techniques, including early forms of cast iron production developed as early as the 5th century BCE, gradually spread westward. The Chinese ability to achieve the high temperatures necessary for casting iron gave them a centuries-long advantage in producing agricultural tools and weapons. The humble stirrups counterpart in maritime trade was the dhow, those distinctive lateen sail vessels that connected the Silk Road's overland routes to maritime trade networks across the Indian Ocean. Arab and Persian sailors developed these ships with triangular sails that could catch wind from multiple angles. From around the 9th century CE onward, dhows carried Silk Road goods from Persian Gulf ports to India, Southeast Asia, and East Africa. These sailors navigated using their intimate knowledge of monsoon wind patterns, sailing eastward with the winter monsoon and returning westward with the summer monsoon. This maritime Silk Road brought African ivory and gold to Asian markets, while carrying spices, textiles, and Chinese porcelain to African and Middle Eastern ports. Carpets and rugs became one of the most distinctive art forms to emerge from Silk Road cultures. The tradition of knotted pile carpets appears to have originated among Central Asian nomadic peoples, who needed portable insulation for their tents. The oldest surviving carpet, the Pazyryk carpet discovered in a frozen Scythian tomb, dates to the 5th century BCE and already shows sophisticated design. As this craft spread along the Silk Road, each region developed distinctive patterns and color palettes. Persian carpets became renowned for their intricate floral designs and use of natural dyes. Cochineal red from insects, indigo blue from plants, rich yellows from saffron. Turkish carpets developed geometric patterns influenced by Islamic artistic traditions. Chinese carpets incorporated dragon and phoenix motifs. These carpets served as portable wealth for merchants and carried artistic traditions across continents. The transmission of agricultural knowledge transformed entire economies. Central Asian farmers developed sophisticated understanding of crop rotation and irrigation that allowed them to cultivate desert oases. These techniques spread eastward into China and westward into Persia and eventually Europe. The three-field crop rotation system, which would become fundamental to medieval European agriculture, may have had its origins in Central Asian farming practices. Chinese innovations in rice cultivation, including early ripening in drought-resistant varieties, spread southward into Southeast Asia and westward into Central Asia. The introduction of new crops could revolutionize a region's economy. When cotton cultivation spread from India throughout Central Asia and into China, it created entirely new textile industries. These weren't just seeds being exchanged, but entire bodies of knowledge about cultivation and harvest. Musical instruments continue their journey along the routes, creating new hybrid forms. The eru, that distinctive two-string Chinese fiddle with its haunting sound, evolved from the shichin, an instrument introduced from Central Asian nomadic peoples during the Song dynasty. The bow technique, drawing horsehair across strings rather than plucking them, was itself a technological innovation that traveled eastward, enabling entirely new musical expressions. Chinese bells and chimes influenced Central Asian and Persian musical traditions. The gong, with origins in ancient China, traveled southward into Southeast Asia, where it became central to gamelan orchestras, while also moving westward. These instruments evolved, adapted by local musicians to fit their musical scales and aesthetic preferences. The concept of the garden as paradise traveled primarily from Persia outward along the Silk Road. The Persian word diza, meaning an enclosed garden, gave us the word paradise. Persian gardens featured geometric designs, flowing water, shade trees, and fragrant flowers, creating cool sanctuaries in harsh desert climates. This garden tradition traveled westward with Islamic expansion, creating the famous gardens of Moorish Spain. It traveled eastward as well, influencing Mughal garden design in India. Chinese gardens incorporated some Persian elements, particularly the emphasis on water features. The Silk Road transported entire aesthetic philosophies about humanity's relationship with nature. Books themselves became valuable trade goods, though they moved more slowly than silk or spices. Buddhist sutras, painstakingly copied by hand or later printed from woodblocks, traveled from India to China carried by devoted monks. The Chinese Buddhist pilgrim Xuanzang traveled to India in the 7th century CE, spending 17 years studying Buddhism before returning with 657 Buddhist texts. Islamic scholars similarly traveled to acquire texts, and the great libraries of Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba accumulated works from Greek, Persian, Indian, and Chinese sources. A single book might be copied multiple times along its journey, translated into different languages, creating a layered text that represented the collaborative intellectual work of the Silk Road itself. In the quiet hours of evening, in the scriptoriums of monasteries and workshops of scribes, in the studios of artists and forges of metal workers, the cultural exchange of Silk Road manifested in the patient hands of craftspeople learning techniques from distant masters, in the careful brushstrokes of painters incorporating foreign motifs, in the notes of musicians experimenting with unfamiliar scales. The Silk Road lived in these small moments of transmission and transformation, each adding to the vast tapestry of human culture being woven across continents.